Welcome to Celebrate a Sister podcast.
A big warm welcome to the amazing Emma Gilmour from Hope Rising Coaching. Like I just said to you, I could talk to you about 1,000 different topics, but I particularly love the work that you do with the whole 30-day alcohol experiment and all the work that you do. You have a wealth of knowledge. So Emma, I'm going to hand over to you and say, Emma, tell us about yourself. What do you do in the world?
Thank you, Emma. It's lovely to be here with you as always. I am a counsellor, psychotherapist, and alcohol coach. I work with women in midlife who are wanting to change their relationship with alcohol, however that might look. But particularly women who are really wanting to kind of find their essence and achieve their potential, and think that are getting a little knock on their intuition door saying, maybe taking alcohol out of the equation for a while, or reducing the amount that I'm drinking, or even stopping drinking forever might be helpful for me in really seizing the power and creativity of this particular time of midlife. So those are my people.
I am your people.
You're my people. You are my people, Em.
And your people. And I love, we've had quite a few conversations. I met you face to face back in last year in June at Uluru, and it was just such, a pleasure to meet you. And of course, we have a beautiful friendship from that great meeting, and you have definitely inspired me in so many ways, particularly around the stopping alcohol. I started this year, as you know, year saying I am going to have January dry, which then I went through February and then went through March, 3 months. And being perfectly honest, it had been many years since I had been alcohol free for that long. Yeah. And, like we discussed, the benefits that I experienced. And you mentioned something around, this stage in life and that creativity piece and our health. Yeah. That was a big one for me. And what would you say, the women that you work with, what would you say is one of their biggest benefits from being alcohol free?
I think there's a few different things, but I think probably the biggest one I found when I stopped drinking for short periods of time, I always found, whether or not I was crawling the walls, which is what my original, when I first started trying to take breaks from alcohol, or I got into the groove with the method that I use, I still found these two things. And one of them was freedom of thought. So instead of having all of this brain space being taken up with, how am I going to get to things or do things so that I can drink?
Yeah.
Or how am I going to manage my drinking today? Am I going to have a glass of water in between a glass of wine? How am I going, all of that brain space. Am I going to drink today? Am I not? Having the little fight in your brain about that, removal of that was so freeing. And then the second part was not waking up in the morning and being mean to myself. Those were the two greatest benefits in the short term, I found. So it was a self-love, because if you're not sort of beating yourself up every day for having done something that you didn't want to do, that you didn't set out to do, so because for a lot of us, it's, and it might even be just, for me, I didn't really drink during the week. It was only at the weekends, but at the weekends, I'd be like, oh, I drank too much again. Or I'd drink on a Thursday night when I wasn't wanting to drink until Friday. And I'd have that sort of self-recrimination. Oh, what's wrong with me? Why couldn't I do this? And And that whole sort of judgmental piece that we have. So there was those two initially. And then I think the other piece, so I've made it 3 rather than 2 now,
Yes.
was the ability to respond rather than react. That tiny pause that you get from so many other things, but one of the things that you definitely get, without a doubt, if nothing else, when you take a break from drinking, is you get a bit of pause space in your reactivity, I would say. And that does wonders for your relationships with other people.
Yes. Yeah. And connection. That is brilliant. And I also love, because we're friends and I know I've loved your world's become bigger in the sense that you do all these other fun things that are alcohol free, like your early morning swimming,
yes,
your beautiful somatic, or is it somatic dance? Is that all?
Yes.
Ecstatic? How do I say it?
It's called, oh my God, my brain's gone. Like ecstatic dance. Ecstatic. In fact, I'm going ecstatic dancing tonight, which is going to be a wonderful thing to have done after a very, very busy few weeks. So I'm really looking forward to letting off a bit of creative, amazing energy and being in community with a group of alcohol-free people who are dancing and enjoying the experience of doing that in a group together.
So beautiful. And, I'm thinking through that and going, how wonderful it is to do those activities alcohol-free and have the full experience instead of a masked or a disguised experience. And, you and I have chatted before and, I've shared with you about, running a workshop, being on an absolute high, and the past Emma would have then cracked open a bottle of champagne and said, let's celebrate, but really dampening that full experience of the joy that life brings to you. And then you go and think, you think that picking up a drink is the exciting bit and I'm celebrating, but you're putting your fire out, you're dampening. Well, that's my experience.
Right. That's exactly right. It's so interesting that you say that, and it's making lots of little sparks go off in my head, as happens when we talk, Emma. But it was thinking about Brené Brown talking about one of the reasons that often people who start drinking again is not just because something bad happens, but because something good happens. And often that experience of joy, and actually our bodies find, especially our sensitive folks, which most people who drink are, and generally, a lot of the time, we're trying to dampen, we don't realize it, but we're actually trying to dampen down some of our effervescence, because our effervescence is a lot. We have a lot of effervescence.
So let's just pep down a bit here. Let's not get too excited.
Don't want to be too much, don't want to be expansive, because we've been told not to be expansive. Many of us have spent our whole lives with people saying, oh, just keep it down a bit, or, just trying to kind of keep us small, keep us constricted. And for me, like you say, I was just talking to this lovely lady called Annabelle Stewart from our group, HEBs as well, and we were both talking. She's been alcohol free since 2017, and we were saying it's so amazing, because you think that being alcohol free is going to be constricted living, but actually it's expansive. It's the opposite.
Isn't that
so interesting?
Beautiful? And that, I love when I've heard you say this, that's the lie we've been told about alcohol. I mean, what's this thing? Oh, social lubricant. In actual fact, in my experience, and this has been my experience, the way I was brought up. So my father has gone to Alcoholics Anonymous his whole life, since he's been 21. So my father's now 72. So I grew up with a house that didn't drink. So then we would go to family functions, and just by nature, my mother's side of the family, my father's side of the family don't drink. And I'm really proud to say my father's never fallen out with anyone in his family. My mother has never had a fallout. There's been no drama through brothers and sisters. And I actually, reflecting on that, I remember going to family events, and the connection in our relationships are so strong with my aunties and my uncles, my cousins. And then when I got married, I married my husband, and his family were the opposite. All I say about our families, he's got the practicing alcoholics, and I've got the non-practicing. They're all alcoholics, though. And that's why, and also I'm saying that not out of school. They would even, I've said that would be common language we would say. So I'm not, dogging out the family. Anyway, and I remember then at 23 years of age, meeting my husband, so I'd had family events with my family that I'm used to. everyone's sober and it's full on connection. Everyone is really happy you're there. I then meet my husband and we go to his family events, and it's very different. Everyone is smashed. And I remember sitting there and thinking, no one could even care less if we were here.
No.
So for me, you know, alcohol really does dampen that connection.
It does. And that's such a huge, it's such a driver for us as humans to be connected. And we have this terribly strong belief that alcohol aids our connection. And like you say, like so many of the beliefs that we have about alcohol, they're actually the opposite is true. But it's extraordinary how much our precious little selves will fight for that belief, because the fear of losing connection is so understandable. It's terrifying for us. Yeah. Because from a survival perspective, we would be left to die, you know, if we weren't part of the tribe. So you can see why our nervous systems, our unconscious brains cling on to it with, you know, like our life, because our evolutionary kind of body, our life literally depends on it, you know. It's extraordinary. So that's why go on.
And that's why, you know, Em, the work you do and this, I mean, really, it's a movement. Like when I think of you, I think, you know, Em, you really are at the cutting edge of a movement. And sure, you know, there's been things like Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff, which, you know, is wonderful and has its place in the world. But I love that you're bringing such a voice in a new way and just really at the forefront, and particularly, you know, again, I am your people, you know, women in midlife, like I'm absolutely your people, as in you going through this perimenopause experience and really tuning into knowing that actually alcohol is really not helpful for me right now.
Yeah. That's it, 100%. And I think that's where I got to. And that's the other thing. I think, you know, like you say, Alcoholics Anonymous absolutely has its place. But unfortunately, and particularly from a community perspective, it offers people community and connection. It's so good for that. And I know loads of people who've had an amazing, so this isn't a bagging Alcoholics Anonymous at all. Everything has its place, right? But this is like, a lot of us don't pick up on alcohol. We might know in our heart of hearts that alcohol isn't working for us, but because of the stigma that comes with the othering, almost the term alcoholic, the Alcoholics Anonymous, it's those people over there with a problem. It's not us normal people, this whole big lie about what normal is, but it's not us normal people. And so what's really different now is that we're beginning to say, actually, alcohol is a problem for everybody, but particularly women in midlife, because it buggers around with our hormones. Yeah. And our hormones are already like this. Yes. Having a nightmare. And suddenly we find our anxieties going through the roof. And alcohol literally is like pouring gasoline on our anxiety. And we suddenly find that where we used to be able to have, you know, wine and actually feel not too bad, suddenly we're having 2 glasses, and the effect, you know, what, number one, we're getting completely hammered. Number two, it's really like debilitating for us. So there's a lot of people coming to this table, and it's not about, oh, I'm drinking in the morning. It's not about I can't stop drinking during the day. It's about, I'm drinking like everybody else seems to be drinking, but this is causing me a problem. And I'm not feeling good about myself, and I'm feeling out of integrity with myself. And I don't feel like there's something inside of me that's saying I'm not connecting with everything that I have to experience and to give in this world. When I'm dumbing myself down, I'm numbing myself with booze. And that was my experience. 100%. Like I say, I quite happily not drink during the week. When I say happily, I'm lying slightly, but mainly I'd not drink during the week. I'd eat healthy. I was running. But at the weekends, I'd really binge drink. And a lot of my friendships and a lot of my social activities were all around drinking. And I really thought that drinking was part of life, because that's what I'd been brought up with. My family drank, and they would never have considered themselves to be problem drinkers at all. And again, it's that sort of terminology, isn't it, of problem drinkers. It's like we're automatically, oh, there's something wrong with you. It's like, no, it's not true. Alcohol is an addictive substance, and the way it works with our chemistry is the more we drink of it, the more we want to drink of it, because of the way that dopamine works in our body. And so that's the other thing. It's like the stigmatization keeps us all from wanting to seek help, because we think, oh well, gosh, we can't be like those people over there with a problem.
Yes,
we can't admit to that. Whereas most normal people, if they drink more than a certain amount, they're going to want to drink more. And if you drink 2 glasses, you're going to want to have 3.
yes.
It's just chemistry, not a moral judgment on you as a person.
No. And I think, I love what you say, and I think it's a great way, because, it is strong use of words saying the word alcoholic. And by definition, no one can ever actually, kind of put that label on someone. It's one of the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous is that I have to admit that I'm powerless over alcohol. It comes back to you. But I think it's when we start to get really honest about our relationship with alcohol, and why are we using it, when are we using it, and what is it really about. And I love how you say, and I'm taking your words here, Em, it's not really about the alcohol, it's like what's underneath that.
It's never about the alcohol, never about the alcohol. And a lot of the reason why people drink is they're very good reasons, right? We drink for very good reasons. We drink because life is hard. We drink because we're overwhelmed. We drink because we've got too much on our plate. We drink because we're trying to push through with this idea of life that we're set as a standard that's really hard. We drink because we're neurodivergent. We drink for so many reasons. We drink because the life that we're living actually doesn't fulfill our expectations, and we're disappointed. We drink because the way that our children speak to us make us sad inside. We drink because the way our husband speaks to us makes us feel sad. There's 1,000,001 reasons why people drink, and most of it is nothing to do with alcohol.
Yes, and that's the truth. It's the truth, isn't it? And when you can actually just sit with that and kind of because I'm thinking myself, and just admit that. Yeah. That's very freeing.
Yeah.
It's very freeing. Now, Emma, I remember this statistic, and I know I've asked you about it before, because like you say, it's not about the alcohol, it's never about the alcohol. And, for some people to say, because often when people will speak to my father, people are just blown away that he is actually not drank for 45. Like they just can't even fathom that. Yeah. And even Dad was just telling me the other day, we were talking about, and Dad was telling about the other day about how people in his earlier life, how people actually couldn't handle that and would try and spike his drink.
Oh my God, it doesn't surprise me, but my God, that's insane, isn't it?
Yeah. And he said, even, his cousin once, he said, well-meaning cousin was like, oh, come on, and then said, I'll get you a drink, they're at a, social outing, and brought back, and Dad said, he won't take something. He said, what if he could smell it, and said, what the hell? And they said, oh, come on, loosen up. But even so much so, because often people around you are really actually uncomfortable with it.
Yes.
And I was talking to Dad about that, and he said, said, you've just got to kind of, get over it and know that I'm pretty sure in who I am, but it's other people that don't cope.
Yes. And I think it's getting better. Imagine, your dad must have been so brave to do that when he did that, 40 years ago, right? That's crazy. That's back when everybody drank so much and would never even have considered, not drinking would have been a very different thing, wouldn't it? He must have been extremely brave.
Well, courage. And also it was pretty much, and Dad would be fine with me sharing this because we talk about it all the time, but it was literally life or death, Em. So, and it wasn't through health. So my father actually got into he'd had, every time he drank, he said it was it's like that bumper sticker, instant arsehole at alcohol. Dad said he was that person. So, he actually got into a fight, and he'd done lots of many things, but he almost, he really physically harmed someone. It was grievous bodily harm. So Dad ended up in jail.
Yeah, right.
So that was the catalyst. But he said what happened in jail, though, was part of his rehabilitation was to actually go to an AA meeting. So Dad said he, at the ripe old age of 22 or whatever he is, he said my motivation to go to AA was because he said I could get cigarettes there. So he said if I went to AA, I'd get cigarettes. He said I get to an AA meeting though, and he said, of course you haven't been drinking because you're in jail. He said then I'm sitting in a meeting, and he said he remembered thinking to himself, I've actually got a problem. And then, you know, his story was, well, my mother was on the outside with my brother. He'd already had a child. You know, my mum and dad are still together. And dad said he had like, he always says like, you know, like a little bit of it was a God job, you know, because he believes in something, you know, great in himself, saying, well, this is actually life and death. I can actually get out of jail and drink, but I'm actually going to die because I cannot have one. You know, one, and he said from then he just made the decision, but making that decision, it's not always been easy though.
No.
Which
I think, I mean, God, what an amazing story.
Yeah.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
And just goes to show as well. I mean, that's the thing. I genuinely don't think, for me, alcohol doesn't bring out it doesn't really have any benefits and doesn't bring out anything beneficial to me in other people. But that's coming from a place now where I'm on the other side. And so I think, I think it's very difficult to imagine that before you're there, if that makes sense, because it feels like it's the duct tape that keeps everything together. It really does. And for so many of us, we're, you know, social anxiety, a lot of it as well is putting up with stuff that we don't enjoy, you know, going to things we don't enjoy, doing things we don't enjoy. We drink so that we can abandon ourselves to a certain extent and go through the experience of doing the things we don't actually like.
Totally. And you know, that is all very valid, isn't it, Em? But when you get really truthful around that, it really does take more than it gives.
Yeah, 100%. It does. And not just from a health and well-being perspective, because and that is all, you know, now the scientific research says, the cancer council, everybody says there's no safe amount of alcohol to drink. So all of those guidelines and everything are really not correct anymore. And more places like the World Health Organization, more and more places are coming out and saying there's no safe amount to drink. That's not meaning to be scaremongering. There's no safe amount of lots of different things that we do. You know, it's not safe for me to go swim in the ocean particularly, but I still do it. So we take risks in whatever we do in life. So it's not really about that. And it's not really about the, you know, the risk to our health. For me, it's about the risk to our soul. And I mean that like my essence. Like for me, I didn't even know who I was until I stopped drinking. I thought I did. I thought I did, but I didn't at all.
Well, you might have on paper, Em, like, you know, as in like a resume on paper.
Yes, I could have reeled off who I was.
Yeah.
But it would be totally different to who I am now.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. And going through your whole life, never finding out who you really are is a really sad way to live your life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It is, you know, it is. And you look, I still, you know, perfectly honest, I still have, you know, an interesting relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, I've, you know, like I said, I've gone dry. Then I have in April, I've drank, and then in May, you know, I'm in this dance.
Yes.
And it's purely because, you know, being absolutely honest, all of those things you listed, tolerating some things, putting up with some things, numbing out. Absolutely. Without a doubt. And it's just, you know, there's just a little bit more spacious around it now, and I can actually admit it.
Yes.
And not
100%.
Bullshit myself or bullshit others.
Yes. Yeah. And like you say, like you might still be doing a little bit of a dance with alcohol. I'm still doing a dance with lots of other things. You know what I mean? It's not, life is a dance, and we focus on the things we want to focus on at different times because that's what feels like the right next step for us. For me, alcohol was the right next step for me, but there's still so many other things in my life that I need to work through. I need to understand. I wish I had a better grip on, and that I'm working on, you know. And, you know, we're all individuals and we all have our own priorities. But for me, I think more than anything that's transformed my relationship with myself, and for me being able to be there for my kids, in their, extraordinarily their journey over the last few years post-COVID, and my journey in this world have been fortuitous in their alignment, and being able to regulate my nervous system in a way and understand what triggers me. And I know, Em, your work is so incredibly good in supporting this as well. And it's so, I do my work around alcohol, but the work that Em does as well, it allows us access to that self.
Yeah.
And doing yoga, doing breath work, doing journaling, doing meditation, they all allow us access to our real self.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're all part of the journey, and we use the different bits at different times that work for us.
Yeah.
But it is that journey inwards and that knowledge that we're seeking something.
Yeah. And it is an exploration, isn't it? Because it's going to be different for everyone, and everyone's path is going to be different. But and that's the thing, you've got to kind of give things a go. And even I've chatted to lots of people, about alcohol, because it's such a great topic and I love to discuss it. I love this. And it's funny, hearing people's, and like you say, it's different times, like people's views on it, and how it can feel like such a ginormous mountain to climb to be alcohol free. That can feel like ginormous. But like you say, putting these other practices in help support that.
So much.
That almost, and even if I think about them, I love my morning practice, because you don't want to drink the night before, because you get a bigger high from your morning practice than you do the night before. So it almost putting all these places, things in place to keep you in your truth. And like you say, in that beautiful, effervescent, where you're allowed to be fully expressed without having that dampener. Because, if I do these practices, I'm going to get the high. I actually don't need that. It's almost like a substitute. I don't know if that's the right word, but
it's a healthy substitute, and it's learning and conditioning ourselves. And I don't mean healthy in that wanky wellness way. I mean, it nourishes our soul.
That's it. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a different thing. It's like, this is something. So we use alcohol to give us what we get from meditation, from ecstatic dance, from yoga, from
swimming in the
ocean, being
ocean,
peaceful, from swimming in the ocean, from walking in nature. We use it to ground ourselves. And it doesn't do what it says on the tin. It's a big fat lie.
Yeah.
And it also restricts our ability to really feel the things that do.
Yeah.
Because it takes the joy away.
You have absolutely nailed it on the head there, Em. It doesn't say what it does on the tin. You are absolutely right. Because we are seeking those things that we think it's going to add to us, but it's not. And, that's marketing, and even, when you were talking before about, the health organizations now have evolved and now cannot give us bullshit, because there's regulations they have to go through, and they actually can't tell you anymore that 2 glasses of wine is healthy for your heart. Because what a great marketing ploy from a red wine company.
Exactly.
Money. And now, they're not allowed to tell us that anymore. Thankfully.
No, but it's amazing the amount of research that's funded by, dubious sources.
Yes, and you know what? And that's the world of business, and you know what? That's just the world we live in, and that is just how it is.
Yeah.
But it's then comes a time where we have to take responsibility and really tune into really, how does it feel? What does it feel like? And that's a process.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And there's something in there, isn't there? Like, that access to our intuition, that not knocking. If there's something that's not knocking on your precious soul, saying, there's, this doesn't feel quite right, I follow that thing, because that thing has something for you. It really does. And it's hard to hear it.
It is. But, and I also think too, sometimes those seeds, and like I said to you, I met you in June. It took me to January to even try alcohol free.
Exactly.
But you were there with me, and I knew you were there, shining the light, holding the hand, opening the conversation. And sometimes that's enough. And I arrived when I arrived, and I'm still doing the dance, but my eyes are wide open. I'm much more conscious now as opposed to unconscious.
That's it. And in fact, you don't ever, it never has to be an all or nothing thing. In reality, it's just about, like you say, shining a light on it, doing what you do intentionally. That is everything that I talk about. I never you have to stop drinking. I choose to stop drinking because I feel better like that. It feels better for me. It's not for everybody. Not for everybody. For some people, it's just to be aware of what you're drinking and to make sure that when you're drinking, you're doing it knowing why you're doing it. You're doing it because you're feeling dysregulated. Why are you feeling dysregulated? Okay, and I'm using it for that. Fine, no big deal.
Emma,
but let's know what we're doing.
Yeah, Emma, your perspective and graciousness around that, saying it's not about the alcohol and it's not for everyone. You have chosen an alcohol-free life, and that's because you've tapped into your own. But even just that permission to say to someone, opening up the conversation, exploring it, but saying it's not for everyone and that's okay, but just coming back. That's very empowering. I'm speaking from my perspective here. That is so empowering. Because it then doesn't make it wrong or right. It just says you actually, know what you know. Yeah. And that's a matter for you.
Absolutely.
But here I am an example of what I am. And that is a beautiful thing.
That's it. We're all amazing human beings doing our very best.
Yes.
That's the thing with it all, really. I think if we can go approach anything in life, knowing that everyone's doing their best, we're not, none of us are trying to drink too much. None of us are trying to eat too much. None of us are trying to escape through work. We're not doing that because we're, bad people. We're doing that because that's adaptations that in some ways are keeping us safe, even though they feel like they're not. They're keeping us safe, and our precious little souls are, desperately there trying to do all these things to keep us safe, and they don't know that they're actually harming us, and they're doing their best, and I think that's it. It's like how can we have compassion for ourselves in the fact that everything we do for a reason, and none of it means that we're bad.
No, that is exactly, and that word compassion with ourselves is, that's a whole nother topic. We got to talk about that one. That's a whole nother topic, isn't it? Because that is one of the hardest practice, because that's a biggie. Hardest. But I love that compassion with backing in on choosing to drink or not to drink or whatever your relationship is, but just coming through a compassion lens.
That's it. None of us are, as human beings, generally, we don't wake up in the morning going, I want to do a shit job.
No, we don't. You remind me of that t-shirt. I love that t-shirt. I'm not a shit mum.
Yeah.
So good.
And it's the being mean to ourselves, isn't it, that causes us the problem, not the actual activity. It's kind of the judgment of the activity that's the problem.
Right. As always, Emma, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. I could talk to you till the cows come home. Now, tell me, if someone wanted to find you, or they were looking at exploring perhaps, this alcohol-free journey, or the 30-day, that you suggest, how can people find you, and what would be a first step for someone?
Brilliant question. So you can find me on my website, which is hoperisingcoaching.com, or on Instagram or Facebook with the handle Hope Rising Coaching, or one word. First step is I've got a couple of worksheets called awareness worksheets, which you can download from my website or from my link tree. And that is what we're just talking about. This is the kind of concept of mindful drinking. And even without the worksheets, it's really starting just to look at what you're doing and not even trying to stop drinking. It's literally let's observe, when do we drink? How much do we drink? What's our triggers for drinking? When do we start thinking about alcohol in the day? When do we start to pour a second glass of wine? When do we start thinking about it? When we come home, what's our routine and ritual around drinking? And then actually, how does it feel in our mouth? How does it feel in our body? How does it feel in our head? And just, every so often, just take an inventory of that. How does it feel overnight? How many times do we get up to go to the loo? How many times do we wake up in the night? What does it feel like in the morning? Just shining that awareness without judgment, just gathering data. That's the best thing you can do to start your journey. No need to do actually anything more. You can quite significantly change your relationship with alcohol just with that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Emma. That is just, that is great. Great first step, great start. And I'll have all of your details, of course, in the show notes. But yes, I just adore your work, Emma. I adore you. I think you are, like I said, this is a movement and such a great conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, my darling. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, my darling Em. I will talk to you soon, my love. Thank you.